welcome back to War Thunder and welcome aboard the T-62. Now, this is a match on Fulda and it's a nice match, and I show you some strengths and weaknesses of the tank, talk you through the statistics, but also I want to talk about where I see the tank, how the environment has changed around it, and for a change, a bit for the better if I might say so. So, first shot doesn't kill the T-95 E1 and I stick around too long. He lets the fire burn and gets the shots into me and damages my gun, so I have to retreat, and immediately we can see the three big weaknesses of the tank: lack of gun depression, lack of quick reload, and also lack of good reverse gear. Wow. And you can see I have no APHE shell loaded, so I want to talk about the battle rating, the meta. I want also to talk about how it has changed, and about the tank review that I once made about it. So, the T-62 was, if I'm not mistaken, the first tank in War Thunder with a smoothbore gun, with AP FSDS, and for the Soviets also with a stabilizer at that battle rating. I think it was before the Object Nano 6 that brought the stabilizer for the Soviets down to even 7.0. And at that point in time I said, or I titled the tank review, I miss APHE. So an armor piercing shell that has an explosive core that blows up the enemy tank once it penetrates in most cases. And this is what you're used to with the Soviets, with the 100mm guns, with the 85mm guns and the 122mm guns, to name the three most prominent gun types for the Soviets, especially for rank 4 and 5. So, what does this mean? Well, the tank was a change of a meta, and at that point in time, it didn't face the right opponents. Especially when we look at the battle rating of 8.0, nowadays that means very often you receive an up tier into 9.0. And this might be one of the best tanks to counter the threat for numerous reasons. It has a stabilizer, it has stock AP FSDS that I'm using here, and it also, well, has decent mobility. And it doesn't face, well, Soviet tanks, so you don't have to fight T-64As, you don't have to fight the upcoming T-64Bs, you don't have to deal with camping Object 120s and so forth. And your armor is just good enough if you are in the right spot to absorb an APDS round from the L7 gun. Not so much from the better L7 APDS with 321mm of penetration, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, you can make it bounce. So the armor is just right good enough. And the only APHE round that can be fired at you that you really have to fear is from the German 128mm, but that is mounted on tanks with slow gun traverse, that are in general slow, long reload and so forth. So the tank now faces better enemies to shoot at, and this is strange. Normally I always complain about power creep, you know. The tank that doesn't get compensated for all the new tanks, and so the firepower is no longer there because of the new tanks getting spammed. The armor doesn't hold up, no compensation for the lack of mobility. So with this tank I never really came around to feel like that. In the beginning I really missed APHE. It was just I was not used to having to aim for MREX with a Soviet tank. Just, you know, shoot somewhere in the crew compartment and the APHE shells do the rest. And if it APHE, AP CBC or APHE BC shells, it didn't really matter. The Soviet shells did the job once they entered the tank. And there were not that many tanks around, and still there are not that many old school tanks around that can reliably absorb this. Maybe the mouse when angling perfectly against, you know, the 100 and 122mm guns, yeah. But then again, you can damage the gun barrel and you can just flank it and so forth. But you know what I'm talking about. With this gun, you can penetrate nearly everything. And I'm using, again, the stock shell, the first shell type that you get. which is an AP-FSDS round, and it has positive normalization at 30 degrees angle of attack. You have more penetration with the upgraded AP-FSDS round. And also the heat shell that I have available, I don't really feel the need for using it. So it's a straightforward tank with armor, good enough mobility, I'd say, not outstanding, but still good enough, and at 8.0 stabilized AP-FSDS gun, and you can deal in up tiers with the Kampfpanzer 70 when you have the first shot. Same goes for the MBT-70, of course. You don't have to fight Russian tanks, so no T-64As or the upcoming B version. So it's just fun. That is the main message. This tank looks not spectacular, but it's fun. It's the first point and click adventure tank, I'd say. And yeah, there you saw it. I absorbed a shell from what is either M60 or M48, I'm not quite sure. And yeah, I penetrated his turret with ease. I didn't have to aim for this pixel or that pixel, just the general direction was enough to penetrate this tank and do a lot of damage to him. I kill a lot of crew, disabled the turret ring if I remember correctly, and also the gun breach. So he has his sweet time repairing. I mean, he has a lot of fun, right? Right? Yeah. So I'm not quite sure what to do right here. This battle was a bit weird. It's on Fulda, it's a big map, but it's what the tank is good at, I'd say. It's good at sniping. I mean, look at the scope. Look how tight the lines are for the ranging. We have nearly 1800 meters per second muzzle velocity, so easy to aim, easy to lead, easy to hit the target, and then you also do tremendous amounts of damage, and yeah, you penetrate in most cases most of the tanks that you're firing at. So why do I play this tank? Well, it's kind of an oddity. I haven't played it since the tank review, and some modules have been added to it, some smoked modules if I remember correctly. Let me have a quick look at it. T-62 modifications. Yeah, it was the ESS, and I had fun playing for it. It was like 40,000 research points. I enjoyed playing it. It was something I wanted to respect this tank, and I was not repelled. So this is kind of a rarity for me, that with a high tier tank or higher tierish tank I have fun. So now the spading is done. I stopped playing the tank, but the question is, why is it necessary for the Soviets to have this tank at this battle rating if other nations have nothing like this? And with the next patch it will kind of change. So the Americans have the T-95E1, and this AP-FSDS shell is also very strong. I did some test shooting with the T-95E1. You can penetrate the T-64A from the front, through the front hull, with that shot, and it doesn't show it like on the stat card. So again, very underrated, but it doesn't have the quickest reload, but it's okay. But the biggest drawback is it doesn't have a stabilizer, so you have to stop and to aim. And with the next patch, the compression throughout War Thunder at higher tiers will get even worse. And I'm not just necessarily talking here about the M1 Abrams and the Challenger. I'm talking here about the Leopard 2K at 8.7 that has a 5-second reload for a 120mm gun that fires a 650mm penetrating HEATF-S rounds as stock shell, and is really fast. Faster than the KPZ-70 or you know the MBT-70 at 0.3 higher battle rating with a faster they have a longer reload and a worse stock grind, so yeah, more and more compression. And then also the Leopard A1A1 now will get an AP-FSDS round with 350mm of penetration if I remember correctly, and that is an 8.3 battle rating tank. So now you are kind of on the same level as that tank, or he's at the same level than you. He has better mobility but less armor, and he has just yeah, quicker reload, stabilizer, and AP-FSDS. So By the way, was that a ricochet from a T-92? Nice meme, America, nice meme. So he interrupted my reload, or I have now a long reload because I'm down to 2 crew members. Even if I'm fully there, my reload is quite long with 12.8 seconds for my expert crew. But it doesn't really matter, now his cannon breach is out, I can charge him and make sure that the next shot will kill him. Some light tanks are really trollish, especially the T-92. I mean, I have pumped in this tank 128mm APHE shells from the Jagdtiger, and they were caught up by the transmission, so yeah. But not this shell, and that was my 5th kill. So also the big light panzer for the Germans will get now an ITO rocket with 630mm. By the way, that is not quite good enough to go through the frontal armor of the T-64B, but through the frontal armor of the T-64A. And we can see how small the margin is for the Leopard 2K's AP heat defense shell, because it has 650mm of penetration. I spent a bit of time on the dev server trying that out. So the Germans get buffed through some of their 8.3, 8.7 tanks, which is nice, which they kind of need, but it's always a problem that it will add up to the compression that we already have in the game, so other tanks will suffer even more from this compression. By the way, the heat defense shell for the Leopard A1A1 will get down from tier 4 as an upgrade to tier 2. So if you're currently researching this shell, wait for the new patch to drop and you will get cheaper costs probably. So here I'm just rushing into the 3rd capture point. I had a nice battle. It was one of the longer battles that I played with this tank. And I hope you liked the intro that I did. Throughout the battles, I really had a lot of fun sniping those aircraft, going for the kills on certain tanks. It was just a nice experience. By the way, just look how beautiful this tank looks in this tank line. If I'm not full of mud, nobody would notice me. So yeah, nice Easter egg here, I guess. Not really an Easter egg, but you know what I'm talking about. So and now the enemy will lose because we have again 2 of the capture zones, and one of our heavy tanks is closing in into A to contest also A. What is there left to say about this tank? Well, simply the Soviets get a counter for a problem even before that problem even appears in other nations' tech trees. And while I didn't really like the tank that much compared to my T-54s because of the lack of APHE, when I first tested this tank, I was just simply not using it 100% right, and yeah, I think now things have changed and the tank has an easier time killing its opponents because of their tighter crew compartments. But nevertheless, let's have a quick look at the post-battle results and then let's wrap up this video. No, come on, load faster, there we go. So, for our 5 kills and 3 capture zones, we got 60,000 silver lines and nearly 5,000 research points. A bit of underwhelming, right? Yeah. Nevertheless, that's it for me today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Please give this video a like if you did.